everyone, it's me again, Brittany, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing my Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. It just flows so well. Book talk. So the first part is going to be non-spoilery, so you can stick around for that if you haven't read it. I will give a warning before we spill into the very spoiler-filled details, and I hope that this video isn't too long, so let's just get started. Throne of Glass is a high fantasy young adult novel that follows Celaena Sardothien, who is Adarlan's most notorious assassin. I love the way that Sarah J. Maas writes points of view. It is in third person, but the way that she like adds exclamation points and question marks, and it's just, you can really feel like the characters being appalled. It's hilarious. I also like that since it is third person, we get to kind of switch and have some fluidity in who is looking at the scene at what times. It helps a lot, especially towards the end, I think. It has a very solid foundation in the beginning, so you can really see Celaena grow. She had been in that death camp for a whole year. You can imagine that she probably isn't at her best. And I think that she did the pacing very well, and I think that her introduction into the magic system that eventually is going to unfold in this novel was done very well, because you don't really expect the magic in the beginning. You kind of just see this as like, oh, it's a different world, but that's about it. But then she kind of slowly, like, she throws in little hints there. I love her characters. I feel like they were very well-rounded, in my opinion. Celaena, she's an assassin. She's been an assassin since she was 8 years old, and she has still such a girly side to her. Yeah, she can slit a man from navel to neck, but she also wants to put a whole bunch of brown sugar in her oatmeal, and she wants to play with puppies. So I love that. Yeah, I don't really have that many bad things to say about it. This is a reread, and I've loved them every single time that I've read them. So yeah, I'm gonna get into the spoiler-filled section, so if you haven't read it and don't want to be spoiled, you should probably go right about now. Let's jump in. Alright, so the first thing that I really wanted to talk about and touch on was the love triangle that's sort of going on throughout this entire book with like Chaol and Dorian and Celaena. I personally think that it was kind of, since this was a reread, I was kind of just looking more into it. I think it was actually kind of obvious from the beginning that even though Celaena was interested in Dorian, she was kind of just interested in him as a distraction. She had just left a death camp. She needed a distraction, and especially after everything that we learned about Sam, and she wanted something easy, and he was really pretty, and he was interested in her, so she just kind of let herself like flow with it. But there's a lot of times where she says, like, she literally tells Nahimia at one point, she's like, I would rather rip my heart out than love the Prince of Adarlan, which I think that should show you right there that it wasn't going to be serious for her ever. And then to like reciprocate, like Dorian's feeling on Celaena, I mean, I don't want to say they're not true, because obviously at the end he really had feelings for her. But in the beginning, I think he sees her as sort of a plaything too. We hear it a lot that he courts many women, and he's like, no, you're different. But like in the beginning, I think it sort of was that she's this gorgeous assassin, she's dangerous, he's bored, he wants something interesting, and that's sort of where his interest lies in her. I don't think it was totally like 100% like sweet and heartfelt or anything like that. It slowly becomes that, like, as he learns even more about her, but it just makes her more and more interesting to him. He is bored. He's a prince bored in a kingdom, and he just wants adventure. She even says it to him at one point. She's like, after that book you gave me, I know that you just want me for adventure. I do want to say though that when I first read this book, I definitely shipped Dorian and Celaena. I loved that match. It was just definitely what I wanted out of this book. So that's kind of where I was at before. But reading it this time around, I still shipped Dorian and Celaena. I just wish that both of their feelings hadn't been so vapid. Now, Chaol and Celaena is a little bit more rough, because they're both just kind of like broken people, and I think that their relationship really lies in the fact that they can relate to each other a lot. They don't want to admit it, but they can really relate to each other. Like, both of them come from really broken homes. Obviously, Celaena's parents are dead, and his parents sort of disowned him, and they have no discipline. She's an assassin, he's been a guard. Like, they both are coming from similar backgrounds, but they both have different alliances, I would say. Like, Celaena's only alliance is to herself, while Chaol's alliance is to Adarlan, and that's like the biggest problem, and he has such like a negative view of her in the beginning. He's like, well, you're a criminal, like, I could never justify all the crimes you've committed and everything, and she's like, well, I wouldn't want you to, because she doesn't really care. And it's really cute though to see their relationship sort of grow, because it's such it's a more natural, like, evolution. I feel like it wasn't just such like a, okay, yeah, I know you're cute, let's like make out, like she was with Dorian. It was more of like a, oh hey, we're relating on like a deeper level and I kind of love this and we're gonna be friends. And I liked that. Well, I mean, especially as he keeps on training her and then he keeps hanging out with her during her dinners and breakfast, and he always wakes her up, and he starts to see like what a committed person she is, I think, like when he sees her like working out before dawn and when she just starts to improve and just keeps getting better. And I did love, I want to mention, the scene after Eliway's, I don't know, when the rebels are captured and slaughtered by Adarlan, and both Dorian and Chaol come to Selena at different times, and they both are sympathizing because they know that she came from Terrasen, which was another conquered land. They know that she must be feeling a lot of those same feelings that Nehemia is probably feeling. And I just liked both their points of view because, first of all, we have Dorian, who's a crown prince. He doesn't agree with everything his father does. I think he's truly, truly a good person, and I love that about him. I think it's probably one of my favorite things about Dorian is that he could have been a sniveling prince, but they made him like the sweetest little baby. You have him coming to her and just apologizing for his dad's behavior, and he feels so, so guilty. And then we also have Chaol come at another point, and him, who's had his alliance with Adarlan this entire time, who believes in Adarlan and doesn't ever speak of treason, he also mentions it to her where he's like, I feel so guilty, like, I can't believe, like, this is something that happens in the world. It was just, I don't know. I really liked that scene. I think it showed how good Chaol and Dorian really are. On the flip side, I thought it was hilarious when they kind of started, like, getting pitted against each other. Like, I need to find the places. So it was after a ball when Dorian decided he was gonna stop by Selena's chambers. It's like 2 a.m. He's like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. And he like pops in her room and she's asleep on the bed and he's just like staring at her and he's like considering his feelings for her, and then Chaol is staring at him from across the foyer, and Dorian's like, oh fucking shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. And you just know that's what he's thinking. When Chaol comes up, he's like, what are you doing here? And then Dorian's like, what are you doing here? By the word, Dorian, she's an assassin. Please, please tell me you haven't been here before. Dorian couldn't help his smirk. I don't even want an explanation. Just get out, you reckless idiot. Get out. And it was just so funny because like Dorian's just sitting there like, yes, I have been here before, and Chaol's pissed. He didn't understand the rage that arose upon seeing Dorian standing in the doorway, didn't want to understand that sort of anger. It wasn't jealousy, but something beyond it. And it's just so cute, and he brings Selena the little gift that he told her he'd get her. So it was just, that was like the first funny part, and then it was later on, she makes a comment, where is it? Can't find it. Well, it's like later on where she's in training and she like pits them against each other, and they're like, now you don't go pitting us against each other. And I don't know, I just thought that was all really funny because it's just funny to see like the two friends, because they are so good and true to each other that they don't ever want to just like step on each other's toes. They're like, well, if you want her, you can have her. And he's like, no, well, if you want her, you can have her. Well, because like Chaol will never admit that he wants her, and so that's kind of where that starts. I was actually pretty disappointed with how the story ended, just because with like Selena actually saying like she's gonna break up with Dorian, and that's when you really can tell that she'd really just been using him as a distraction. She's like, don't you think it's inappropriate for me to be the king's champion and to go out with the crown prince? And she's like, I don't want any more secrets, I'm not gonna do this. He's like, well, I'll tell it to my mom. And she's like, no, I just don't want to do it. And that's like where you can really see, because he's willing to do anything to make it work, because his feelings are really true for her at this point, and she sort of came to the realization that hers weren't. And then she goes and talks to Chaol. So yeah, I think it was always gonna be Chaol. Now next up, Selena. I like her progression through the story. There isn't a lot of character development in her ballpark, not a lot in my opinion, but I really like, you just see how much she's grown since Assassin's Blade. Selena is still a wreck and she's super annoying, but like she has her moments. Like when she saves Nox, that part was amazing. Like when they're just climbing the wall and Nox falls off and she does this super heroic save and saves him. I thought that like really showed that, like, I mean, I think it showed it to Chaol too, that Selena isn't just this like cruel, conniving assassin, that she really does have a soul, and she's not mean. She just kind of has that on top. I also feel like Nox, he's gonna have to come back at some point. Like Sarah J. Maas normally does not put in a character just to never talk about them again, especially when it's like that serious of a character. Like, Knox had a pretty big role, I feel like, in this entire book. Like, he was Selena's friend, he was the one that she confided in, she saved his life, like, she taught him how to fight, and I feel like Sarah J Maas normally does that thing where it's like the life for a life thing, and she saved Knox's life, so I think he's gonna have to come back later on. I don't know though, I'm not sure. I just kind of want him to. He was really cool. He actually was, okay, this is kind of where I was like thinking like maybe he's gonna have to come back, because he's from, I think Paranth is where they say he's from, and Paranth is in Terrasen, and she's from Terrasen, so I was like, so we'll see, I guess. Oh, also, I wanted to talk about the word marks, because I think those are like probably the coolest part, because obviously we hear in the beginning that somehow magic just disappeared. Like, she had magic in her veins and she could not touch it anymore, and she was totally cool with that. And it's just curious that like word marks do work, and I thought it was interesting that it was part of Eowyn's culture, and that Nehemia like really knew about it and everything like that. Like, how did the king find out about word marks, and why were they in the garden? And it was just very, very, very curious. And how did Cain find out about it, really? Because he just should not have. I hate Cain. I truly hate Cain. And I thought it was funny that, okay, I think it was a little unrealistic that Selena hated Cain from the very beginning. Like, she saw him and then she was like, yep, I hate him. It's like, you haven't even gotten to talk to him yet. But yeah, I hate him too, especially that end scene where he's basically just like toying with her, and he has the demons like surrounding her, and he's just like doing a slow execution, and it was just. And then Elena just freaking bursts through the doors after Nehemia opens the doors, and she like expels all the demons and takes out the bloodbane from Selena's system. And of course, it's bloodbane, the one poison that she couldn't figure out in the poison test. I thought that was like a. And Tain. Let's talk about Tain, because she's my favorite love to hate kind of character in this. She's so annoying. I think like I can see like girl hate in the beginning, but like it gets justified right away. Like, Selena's there, she's like, I hate a woman that will turn against her own gender just to get a man. So it's like, it makes sense, I think, but like when we find out in the end that Tain was being like manipulated and possessed by Duke Parrington the entire time, you kind of have to feel bad for Tain. I have a theory that she didn't, like, she had an interest in the prince going into this entire thing, but she never would have done anything about it. I think that she would have been happy just like being a duchess, and that would have been the end of it. But with with Parrington manipulating her emotions and making her feel different ways and making her want more, she turned into this really awful person. Like, I don't think she was that great to begin with. I'm gonna be honest. I think she really was a very self-centered, very stubborn, very like classist lady, but Parrington's powers definitely made it way worse. I also thought it was hilarious that she just like casually smokes opium like throughout the entire book. Like, they kind of like hint that it's not the most proper thing, but they also kind of like, when she's like, well, I could just say it's because of my headache, so it's kind of okay. So I thought that was hilarious. And I wonder if like, because obviously Bloodbane, oh my god, I just had a realization. Obviously, Bloodbane opened up Selena's mind to the other world. Maybe opium was opening up Tain's mind to the other world, because we definitely hear like wing beats in her section where she's like, I can hear wings and everything. So opium obviously probably isn't as strong as Bloodbane, but I think it might have loosened her shields, which is curious, you know? You have to wonder why Duke Parrington used Tain. Was it just because she was pretty? Was it just because she wanted more power? Was it because of the money that her family had to offer? There was a very like curious line in this where Tain's like talking about Selena. I think this is when we first see Tain. And she was like, though I worry how much Parrington's courting will interfere, but I do adore the man for inviting me to Rifthold. My mother must be writhing in her grave. And then she goes, I wonder who she is. And she changes it by saying, because one of her ladies says, your mother, my lady? And she goes, the girl the prince brought into Rifthold. But I don't think it was about the girl the prince brought into Rifthold. Like, it might have partially been about it, but we never hear anything about Tain's mother. How did she die? When did she die? Does she know her mother? Is this somehow connected with why Parrington chose her for everything? Like, I'm just really, really curious. So I want to see how that plays out. And then poor Tain, like, after everything, like, she's been manipulated the entire time. I mean, I totally, she's a very unlikable character for this entire thing. I just think like her ending was really unfair, and she gets thrown into the dungeons for doing what Parrington manipulated her to do. It was super frustrating to read. I want to talk about the actual competition, because you don't really expect this kind of competition when you go into it. You were thinking like, you know, battles to the death and things like that. But no, it's so practical when you really think about it. Like, this competition is testing every aspect of what it means to be an assassin. It's testing your poison knowledge, it's testing your endurance, it's testing your aim and speed and your ability to climb. Like, all the tests that we did hear about, those are all things that like are actually really necessary if you want to be like a skilled killer. So I'm surprised not more people used assassins. I think that would have been a really good idea. And I thought it was just kind of funny. Like, they really made it sound like you're all gonna die. Like, it's, I mean, and they did, but it was because of Tain. Overall, I think the competition was very, very practical. And I wonder why, like, anyone thought, because there were a lot of thieves in there, and I wonder why people were like, you know what, I think a thief is gonna do good to be a king's champion. Like, what was going through their head? Like, so I didn't notice this in any of my other reads, but Celaena's the only girl in the entire, like, champion. Like, I kind of forget, just because Throne of Glass has very, very strong female leads. Like, they're way more badass than the men most of the time. So I forget that in this world it's still that way, where men are more respected than women. And there are like some little clips of that, like at the very end where the king is talking to Dorian and he's like, if she had been a man, she would have been wonderful at politics, or something like that. And I was like, oh yeah, they don't respect women that much in this. And I totally forgot, but people just like looked right over her because she was the only girl in the competition, and they were kind of rude to her when they were like, why don't you learn skills useful to women and just lay on your back or something like that. And I was like, pfft. Now, oh, and her scene when she like beats, who is it that it's Pelor, I think his name, Pelor. When Pelor, Kane's like little lackey, is being super rude, and then they take it out and she fights him and beats him without ever touching a weapon. I was like, you badass bitch. I freaking love Celaena. She's just like such a badass, and she's so sweet at the same time. And then back to the magic, I thought it was kind of interesting that they just threw in ghosts too. It's just such a wide magic system. Like, this has so much room for growth. We just found out that magic had been in the world, and then somehow it disappeared. Magic left them. They believed in gods and goddesses. There's ghosts. There's like this other world, and like the Ritterak and the word marks. Like, there's just so much to do with that. And it's like, I never realized when I first read Throne of Glass how much magic really was in it. And then I remember I was really surprised, because Air of Fire, there's like, they just throw magic at you and you're like, what the? This is not what I got into. But you kind of definitely do. This is the slow introduction to the amount of magic you're going to be introduced to in the rest of the series, and I kind of love it that way. And I think that's really all I wanted to talk about. I just like, I mean, I guess back to Celaena and her friendships. I love the friendships she makes. I think that they're really good for her. She's just come through a very dark place in her life, and she needed them. Nox is obviously a really good friend in his own way. Nehemia is an amazing friend. She's like there for her without Celaena even knowing she was there for her, and it's just like, I love how clever Nehemia ended up being. Like, when I first read it, I remember being so shocked in that scene where Nehemia is reading like a book way above her level, and Celaena's like, what are you doing reading that? I thought you couldn't read above that level. And Nehemia just looks at her and she goes, then you're a fool like everyone else in this castle, with no accent. And I was like, ah. I also love the way that like Celaena and Nehemia like really meet, because Nehemia's pissed and then Celaena just starts speaking to her in LOA and no one else can speak it, and she's just so happy. And it's just like, and then I love how everyone else describes their friendship. They're like, you should see them when they really get going, because they just pick on people, and I'm like, you They're just so funny because they're both very opinionated, very like stubborn, very strong women, and I love them. Yeah, that's actually all I wanted to talk about in this book talk today. I know it still ended up being pretty long probably. And I did want to mention, so as I said, I'm going to be defacing my copy of Throne of Glass. I made a few, my yellow marks are the things that I'm thinking of drawing or like quoting. And I believe I will film the process. I just don't know when that video is going to come along. This might take me this whole month. This might take me this whole read along. I'm really not sure, but I'm really excited about it. So if you guys do want to see a video about that, just let me know in the comments down below. Let me know how you felt about Throne of Glass in this reread. And that's really all I have to say to you guys today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Oh wait, I forgot to say bye. And I will see you in my next one. Bye!